Welcome back, everyone. This is the Changelog, and I'm your host, Adam Stacoviak. We're a member-supported blog podcast and weekly email covering what's fresh and what's new in open source. Check out the blog at thechangelog.com, our past shows at 5by5.tv/changelog, and subscribe to our weekly email. It's called the Changelog Weekly. We ship it on Saturdays. You don't want to miss it, and you can subscribe at thechangelog.com/weekly. This show is hosted by myself, Adam Stacoviak, and Andrew Thorpe. Now, we recorded this show in particular before the new year. Didn't have time to publish it before the new year, but at the tail end, you'll hear Andrew mention taking some time off. That's already happened. We missed you. We're back. We're excited. It's 2014, and this is episode 116, and it's sponsored by DigitalOcean, FreshBooks, and TopTal. We'll tell you a bit more about FreshBooks and TopTal later on in the show, but our good friends over at DigitalOcean have some cool stuff happening. They're nearing their millionth droplet, and to celebrate, they're giving away $10,000 in hosting credit. $10,000 in hosting credit. You heard it right. To a lucky user who hits this milestone. And there are 3 ways you can qualify. Number 1, you got to be the user who spins up the millionth droplet. So that's number 1. Number 2, you've got to include your Twitter handle in the droplet's host name. So when you create the droplet, you got to put your Twitter handle in that host name. And number 3, you have to tweet to DigitalOcean with the hashtag millionth droplet. For example, I'm going to be the millionth droplet on DigitalOcean. That would qualify you. If you do all 3 things, you're in it. So try DigitalOcean today for free using our promo code ChangelogSentMe. That's ChangelogSentMe. That'll get you a $10 hosting credit, as well as a chance, I guess, to potentially be the millionth droplet. So good luck to you, but head to DigitalOcean.com to get started. And now, on to the show.
We're joined today by Eran Hammer to talk about Happy, a server framework for Node.js, and Node Black Friday, when Walmart went Node for Black Friday. So, Eran, welcome to the show. Why don't you give us an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Hey, glad to be here. I am the Node lead architect at Walmart. I'm part of the mobile group, and my team is basically focused on moving the existing mobile services infrastructure from some legacy Java stuff to Node, and we basically drive all the API for the mobile clients.
So, what did you do before working at Walmart?
Immediately before, I was about 3 years at Yahoo, focusing mostly on standards and focusing on interop and open web. I was one of the founder of the Open Web Foundation, and did a lot of IPR work in terms of CLA and agreement there. And before that, I spent about 10 years on Wall Street building high-frequency trading systems. And that kind of covers the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm. So you've definitely been deep into the business side of things.
I've done a whole bunch of different things. And my philosophy in life is that life is all about collecting experiences. So I tend to get bored with things and just switch to completely unrelated fields.
Yeah. So
going from finance to just consumer web to retail.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the retail. So what was behind the decision for Walmart to go to Node, and what was that process like?
It wasn't a very intense process, to be honest. Basically, 2 years ago, Ben and Dion joined Walmart Mobile, and they were looking for ways to kind of move it to the 21st century. From some really old stacks on Java it was using. And what was clear is that we're not going to be rewriting all the backend services, but we are going to be building a new orchestration layer that's going to talk to a whole bunch of new and legacy systems. Some of them, using like AS400 and offering you awesome SOAP APIs, and others a little bit more modern with XML stuff, and so we don't want to implement any of that on the mobile clients. And what you want to do, you want to build an orchestration layer that kind of abstract all the crap in the back, or the good stuff in the back, and then provides a uniform API to the mobile clients. So we were looking at different technologies, and we just felt that Node was the right choice. That an orchestration layer that is mostly doing network. It's basically a glorified proxy with some data manipulation or data transformation, but it's not, no calculation. You're not pricing anything. You're not managing complicated state. That's all done by the upstream, account management and those. So Node looked like a good choice, and so we just went ahead and made a big bet that it's going to work out.
So you obviously Walmart's one of the biggest companies in the world, and in my experience with larger companies, it can be it's a lot harder to move a big ship, right, than a small boat. And so, what kind of pain inside of Walmart, if any, did you experience when you're presenting this this newer emerging technology as an alternative to a reliable stack that's been around for a while?
So there's still resistance coming from other teams within mobile. It was never an issue because mobile started out as a labs-like environment where our mandate was to experiment and try new things and use whatever technology we want. We were already introducing new things if it's iOS apps or Android apps to the existing IT stack that was used there. So that wasn't a big deal. But then going to the rest of the organization, when we went to the IT folks and the data centers to try to get some machines we can run it on. One of the first problems we hit is that the version of Solaris that Walmart was running at the time could not support Node. We couldn't compile Node on that operating system. And so it took some time for us to convince enough people to get us some Linux boxes or SmartOS boxes that we can actually run stuff. So it was more once you start interacting with the rest of the IT organization, and it wasn't much pushback. It's just we were asking them to do new things that they have never done before, and those things takes a lot of time. And if you think about it, Walmart runs I think it's 17 countries now. So they're running all their operations all from the same set of data centers. So you're talking about the retail stores and the online all coming from pretty much the same spot. So you can imagine the change control in those data centers is quite insane,
right?
And for a good reason. You're talking about if you take down those data centers in the U.S., you're disrupting food supply for about 40% of the country. So it's the scale and the size and the magnitude of any change you're making is significant. So that's still the issue, but it's been very manageable.
Yeah. So for Walmart Mobile, I guess, and I wouldn't say I'm fuzzy. I think I've made some assumptions, but did you launch the Node client for Black Friday, or when did that launch actually happen?
We deployed we are working with a proxy strategy where basically the idea is to stick Node as a dumb proxy between the mobile clients and the existing services. And then slowly, as based on business priorities and other requirements, start to hijack endpoints at the proxy and implement them in Node. Mm-hmm. So we've started doing that, but we're still proxying a large amount of the traffic through Node to the upstream services. So we first rolled this out in April, and we kind of ramped up to 100% of all mobile traffic around June. And we've been running with all mobile traffic going through Node since June. The problem was that we suffered from a pretty awful memory leak that caused us basically to have to restart the services all the time, and so we were never sure up until the day of Black Friday that our system is actually ready for that capacity. And we had mitigation, we had other plans, we had failovers, so it wasn't like, if this doesn't work, we don't have mobile services for Black Friday. That clearly is not going to be acceptable,
right?
But we really didn't know up until the day of how well this is going to perform.
So how well did it perform?
Oh, it was the most boring thing ever.
You had a tweet. I can't remember exactly, but it was something along those lines. The servers were bored out of their mind.
Yeah, the servers are bored out of their minds. What you said. That was pretty intense. And then you were also doing a lot of live tweeting at that time too, like keeping a lot of nerds on their toes, I'm sure, just kind of like watching your progress. And I know I was shopping and watching at the same time. And I just was watching the, NodeBF was the hashtag on Twitter. We linked out to it, and we'll put this in the show notes too, so y'all can catch up, those listening. But Node had the servers that they were bored. So what was that like?
I mean, the servers were doing nothing. They averaged about 0.75% CPU. That's not 75%.
Right.
That's 0.75%. And by the way, we had a bug in our monitoring system for a while where we thought that the range was 0 to 1. And we were really worried for a while because we were constantly hitting 50 to 60% CPU. And then we started investigating, like, what is going on? I mean, we're not doing anything. Why is the CPU so high? It should really be like 20. And then we realized that it was a unit bug, and we were actually at 0.5% CPU. So
that's great.
Yeah, it was very, very uneventful. But the node process was just sitting there doing nothing. Memory was completely stable. People have nicknamed my RSS charts as my lasagna charts.
Oh, yeah.
Where basically it just looks like a bunch of squiggly but flat
lines,
trending lines.
Yeah.
It was really, really boring. And as the night progressed and my team was all up, everybody was coming up with suggestions of how we can just gently poke the servers to make something break. Just to kind of keep it a little more interesting. Everybody has their own suggestion of what we can do.
So, I mean, like you said, Black Friday is like the biggest retail day, of the year. And you guys, what were you planning for? You said you had no idea what was going to happen, but I mean, really no idea, or were you hoping for the best, or like, what was in y'all's mind?
So, I mean, the industry as a whole, the average is basically 40 to 60% of annual revenues online happen between Thanksgiving and between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Which, if you think about it for a business, that's awful. It's insane.
Yeah.
And if you have a day downtime, with Black Friday and Cyber Monday being the two busiest shopping days, although now with all the retailers, Thanksgiving has become the number one shopping day. It's a little crazy, but that's where we've seen the most traffic, especially since everybody's looking up the deals, not necessarily buying, but they're looking it up. So we had the business every year. The business gives us estimates of how much traffic, what's the multiplier going to be from both last year and from September of the same year.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at 2, 3, 4 times multipliers in terms of volume. But more than anything, we really didn't know how well the upstream services are going to perform. So if you think about it, Node sits between the clients and the Java services. And because Node is doing such a great job managing the incoming traffic, it's such a great little executable for managing sockets. Mm-hmm. It's basically acting as a queue. So load balancer is basically sending traffic to the Node processes, and then they are trying to proxy it over to Java. And if Java is behind and starting to get slow, it doesn't really add much load on the Node process in terms of CPU because it's a non-blocking system. Right. So it doesn't do anything. It just sit there waiting for socket events. And no socket events are coming back. But what is happening is that we are growing in memory because we keep holding more and more sessions in memory until the Java stuff is ready. And in that environment, basically Node becomes a queue. And if Java gets very, very slow, then Node is, the queue gets very, very big until at some point it blows up. So we didn't really know what to expect in terms of how big is this queue going to be? How well is the memory going to perform? So we basically dumped a lot of extra capacity. Yeah. We ended up, I think, with about 6 times more capacity than we actually needed. Which really contributed to the completely boring performance.
So this was then a major success, right, for you and your team?
This was huge. I think I think we kind of proved the entire stack, but also the quote I've been using privately in conversation with the Node core team and a few other companies like Joyent and Voxer. I kept saying like I don't want to be what Twitter was for Rails. I don't want to be the Rails doesn't
Node
scale
can't
guy
scale, yeah.
of Node. Because even though like it was largely bullshit at the time, it did cause quite a significant damage to Rails adoption. Once Twitter was having problems, a lot of people there was like this backlash, and people were going back to PHP because Facebook was on PHP, and that was clearly much better.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not going to be that guy. Like I'm not going to be the number one headline on Hacker News saying Node doesn't scale. Just ask Walmart. So I was really freaking out about that, and that was like the back of my mind as we were approaching this. And so we kind of threw more capacity at it. We were like watching it. Like everybody on the Node core team was like following it throughout the night, like all waiting for like if anything goes wrong, to jump on IRC with us and like help us fix it live. It was really like it meant a lot to the community as a whole.
Yeah,
it seemed like it. I mean, that's really the way I took it, because we tweeted that night. Follow NodeBF on Twitter, and lots of retweets came from that. And I think your tweet alone got 82 favorites and 157 retweets. And it just seemed like a lot of people were just like watching real time, and a lot of people who were involved in Node just kind of like, behind the scenes cheering to make sure that, everything had gone successfully for you.
Yeah, I mean, my follower count on Twitter jumped by like 1,000 for the night.
It's crazy.
So it was quite funny.
But it's it's like you said, it's big for the community, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people that like Node, they want to see Node succeed, and so it's not just big for you and your team because you're proving an emerging technology to a very large company, but it's big for the whole community because, like you said, if something would have fallen flat on its face, whether it was your fault or an inherent problem with Node, then you're right. The rumors would have been Node can't scale, and I mean, you still hear that every once in a while when people are talking about Rails, just when they haven't, been maybe not in the community for the last couple of years, but you'll still, every once in a while hear somebody say Rails can't scale, and that kind of sticks with you. So you're right. It's a good thing for the whole community, not just the Walmart Node branch. Yeah,
this was a big deal, and it also at Node Summit I gave a talk. But basically, my plan for Node Summit was to give a talk about Black Friday. Of course, there was nothing to talk about, so I basically gave a talk about how everything went wrong all the way until Black Friday, and we only got the fix for the infamous memory leak in the week of. Like we actually we couldn't even verify it because we were doing daily releases. So we never actually got to observe the server over like 48 hours to see that the memory leak was actually fixed. So it was all very theoretical, and so that was part of the thing, is that if the memory leak was still going on, it required us to restart our servers every 7 days, and we were expecting up to 10x traffic, and that means we can have to restart the servers more than once a day.
Yeah.
And on Black Friday, you don't really want to touch your servers.
Right.
So it was all very suspenseful, but it was kind of like edge of your seat suspenseful about boredom.
So did you have somebody like working on that memory leak all the time, trying to find it, or what happened with that?
So we found a memory leak. We saw the pattern of the memory leak back in April already. And then by June, it was I was convinced the memory leak, and it was one of those things where like I argue with everybody, including my own team, that it is a memory leak, and they're all like, no, it must be something else. And I said, no, it's a Node memory leak, and they're like, no, it can't be Node memory leak, because if somebody else would report it, right? Like other people are using Node in production, and they're not seeing any of that behavior, and so we end up spending quite a lot of effort. Putting quite a lot of monitoring into the system, where I was basically spending 3 months trying to find correlation between the memory leak, when memory was spiking, to when something else was going on. So we added monitors for client disconnects and response times and concurrent connections and just connections per second. And like really, like we build in so much monitoring into it, so we can start comparing it, and nothing correlated. Just absolutely nothing. We knew the more traffic we get, overall, the more leak we get, but the leaking is not happening when the traffic is coming in. It's just that there's a correlation between the overall daily pattern. And at some point, I found a few clues that I had some ideas, and I said, okay, we're going to make a configuration change that is going to double the amount of HTTP client calls that we're making. And I said, and watch, we'll do that, and the memory leak will double itself. And people are like kept saying like, no, it's not going to happen. And of course, memory leak doubled itself, which helped us, zoom into the exact spot where we're leaking, and I was able to isolate that. And then I wrote a little program that showed it, but it took about 12 hours of it to run to even show you a slight leak.
And it was all from closing file descriptors.
No, it ended up being a missing handle scope in the C++ side of Node. It was one line missing in Node in one function. It was basically 2 C++ words. That was the bug, and it caused in some cases it caused a 4 bytes leak per HTTP request.
Yeah, so it takes a little while to add up, but that definitely adds up.
Yeah, and at the time we were leaking about 8 megs a day. So we got it really, really low by mitigating it in other ways, but couldn't really solve it. And then TJ Fontaine from the Node core team was able to. He spent like 3 weeks on it, with some crazy stuff. And there's a great blog post on the Joyent blog detailing exactly what TJ used, and it's kind of like a little bit like black magic.
So that's interesting, the blog post, though. Let me ask you, what was that experience like going back and forth with the Node core team and trying to prove this, and how receptive were they to you, pointing this stuff out?
So when we first reported it back in like June or July, it was people have been quite dismissive. Where basically the theory was like, there is no way we have such a gigantic memory leak and you're the only one seeing it. But at the end, when I was able to actually come and say, hey, here's a little bit of Node code, and if you run it, it will show you the leak. And then, of course, they ran it, and they were like, no, we're not seeing any leak. And I said, like, just leave it alone for 12 hours and come back to it tomorrow. And they did, and they opened it up, and it's like, no, it still doesn't look like a leak. It's like, oh, go ahead and plot your trend line.
Yeah.
On that chart. And then they did that, and they were like, oh, yeah, you know what? It looks like there's something going on there. And then as they added more instrumentation, they could actually start seeing what was actually happening is V8 was building a gigantic array of undefined, which is where the 4 bytes came from. Basically, it was pointing to the canonical undefined reference within the V8. It was just building a gigantic array of undefined that were never getting cleaned.
Right. So
because of
so you said it was fixed the week of, is that right?
It was fixed about two weeks before, but there was some build issue with the SmartOS distribution of the new version of Node, and so we missed a stress test because it was like a few hours late, and then after that we were busy with a few other things, so we ended up putting it a week before. And crossing our fingers. Yeah.
Can you really, how easy is it to test that, though, to stress test that?
Leave your system in production for a day?
Yeah.
It's, like my favorite thing about Walmart to say is that we're too big to stage.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we could not really reproduce it for months. And we still can't reproduce it with the actual system. The only way I was able to reproduce it was with this little script I wrote that was creating a very specific scenario of bursts of traffic to actually stress Node in just the right way to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, so long story short, though, the whole thing was a big success, big win for you, big win for Node. Let's talk a little bit about, the actual, the implementation of what you guys did, and then potentially, get into Happy a little bit. So it's my understanding that you guys started out using Express, as that was really the only option at the time. Is that right?
So I started, the origins of Happy were really back at Yahoo. I was working on a project called Sled for about a year. So I started when Node was just 0.2 just came out. So I guess it was November 3 years ago. And and I was building a list making, a collaborative list making tool at Yahoo, and I used Express at the time. It was really the only option. There was really just Express and Connect; those were the only two things, and Express was built on top of it. And we used that for a while, but what was going on, in that 1 year is that I found myself basically building a framework on top of Express, because Express gave so little functionality. It basically was just a router with a little bit of helpers, but it wasn't really a full web framework that did all the things I want in terms of redirect the right way and handle like rendering views without having to constantly set up the view context and at the time, also the middleware ecosystem for Express was very, very, very young. I mean, basically, I was finding Express bugs on a daily basis and just IMing TJ and saying, "Hey, TJ, another one." And so that has changed very dramatically. But when I went to Walmart, what I did is I took the Express layer that we've built in the Sled project, which was open source by Yahoo. So that was easy. And then we kind of like said, okay, we're going to call this Happy, and it's going to be basically an Express layer that will add everything we needed. And if you look at what PayPal just did with their Kraken framework, they kind of did the same thing. They took Express, and then they realized Express by itself is not really a very useful framework for a large team. So they went and added a bunch of abstraction and layers on top of that.
Right.
So we did that for a while, and it was working well. But then we started hitting the limits of what Express can do. And the biggest one is the way the router is designed in Express. It's basically just a gigantic array of regular expressions. And all it's doing is that whenever a request comes in, it's just go through the array in the order that you added your routes into the array, and it's doing a regex match against each one of them. And when it finds a match, it calls the function that will match it. And when you and all the middleware stuff is basically just adding a wildcard match into the array. So there's no magic there. It's a very, very it's kind of beautiful in how simple the entire architecture of Express is. But when you work in an enterprise environment, when you have multiple teams working on the same server, you're going to want the server to take care of, for example, collisions in your routes. You don't want to have to end up with two routes with the same path, two middlewares conflicting on what they're changing, and very fast we got ourselves into middleware hell, which I'm very proud to say that was a term that I started, probably being like one of the first people to actually use Express in such a large scale that we experienced it, and it was really painful. We wanted the framework to protect us from doing stupid things, and it wasn't. So we switched to Director from the Nojitsu guys, and we used Director for a little bit because Director just gives you a router and you can use it as any way you want. But then we hit limitation there as well because of the way they store the route tree. And at that point, we felt pretty good about just doing our own internals. We're talking about, a year and a half into working on this environment, and the other thing is that when you start to build a real production dependency on these things, you kind of require a different level of maturity from the modules you're using, from the open source stuff you're using, and we found ourselves trying our best to use like public open source modules, but very slowly but surely moving towards more and more code base that we were managing it, just because the quality was more within our criteria, and if there was a problem, we can fix it right away. We didn't have to fork or start playing all those games or trying to find someone on Twitter to help us accept a pull request we've made. And so we're still using a significant amount of open source stuff, but whenever we hit a wall with a module, we are much more trigger happy now to fork it and create our own than we were a year ago.
Right. You guys are much more familiar with the whole environment now as a team and your needs in that environment, so there's a lot more confidence in that area, I would imagine.
Yeah, and we're also we feel like we're giving enough back that if you talk to most of the leader in the Node community, they're all about small tiny modules. They all hate frameworks. And it's kind of funny whenever they talk about framework. That like you always hear one of them will say, "Yeah, there's also Happy from the Walmart guys, which if you're doing large scale stuff, that's actually a good solution. But really you don't need it." It's always this qualified love coming from a lot of the core Node people, which I respect. But at the same time, if you work in a large team, you have a lot of people building stuff. You really want to have a plugin architecture that people can build their own stuff and then just deploy it together without having to coordinate every change, without having that one gigantic scary routing table file that everybody has to constantly change to get their stuff into the server. So it's those were the things we focused on the last year in terms of the framework.
So it's interesting then, because you guys started, so you did your own thing, and with Happy, you talk about how the Node community loves a bunch of little tiny modules, but you briefly mentioned it, but you went through a pretty modular approach to how you deal with Happy, right? So first of all, your organization name on GitHub is Spumco, and why don't you real quick tell me the story you said about Spumco and where that came from?
So the first module was called Happy, which was short for HTTP API. So it was really an acronym. But then as soon as I wrote it down, I was like, happy, joy, joy. All my childhood Ren and Stimpy days just came flooding back. And so, of course, the second module we created was called Joy, and we called it JOI just to stick with the same spelling style of Happy. And after that, basically every new module we created was based on some kind of Ren and Stimpy character or episode. And at some point, we were like over 30 public GitHub projects, which made life on the official Walmart Labs GitHub account quite miserable, because GitHub doesn't give you like any way to organize your stuff other than everything is flat in your organization. And when you have a couple hundred other people all using the same GitHub organization, the dashboard becomes useless. So we were like, okay, we need to move our stuff to a new org, and what are we going to call it? And I was like, I don't want to call it another Walmart 2 or like let's find something a little more creative. So we chose Spumco, which is Spumco with a C is the name of the animation studio that created Ren and Stimpy. And so we call our organization Spumco with a K as a kind of a homage to that.
Yeah. It's all your plugins here. So you guys actually were brave enough to name one Poop, and that is the plugin for or the module for kind of like exception error handling. Is that right?
Well, the proper tagline is it's a plugin for taking dumps.
Yeah, processing and dumping, cleaning up after an uncaught exception. So that's funny, but
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a very modular approach. Now, this interesting design is that kind of like to speak true, to kind of capture the heart of the Node community, so that people can pick the modules as they want and kind of mix and match what they want for their different configuration.
So I'm a big believer in expansion contraction pattern of development, where you add features to your main framework, to the core of the framework, and then as they mature, as you gain some experience of how they work, you figure out if they should be abstracted out into their own sub-module, or if they should stay part of the core system. You're still keeping the same integrated experience overall, but in terms of code organization, you're still breaking it up. So.
Right.
But I would argue that so Happy itself, just the Happy module, it's a pretty heavy framework. So I wouldn't try to portray it as a lightweight modular solution. It's taking a very opinionated, hands-on approach to writing an HTTP web server or API server. And the reason for that is that we really want an integrated solution where when you define a route, you can define the caching policy all in one place. You can define your authentication. You can define your input validation, and everything just works out of the box. You don't have to then start basically finding the right plugin to do this and the plugin to do that. Everything we deemed as absolutely necessary for building any kind of modern web application is built in, and so that's a core principle there. What we've done though is whatever we consider to be more of an optional component. For example, there's a very popular Express middleware called Passport that basically everybody's using for all their third-party authentication. So we created a wrapper for that, and that's called Travelog. And so that's not part of core. It's part of it's a heavy plugin you can add in. The other thing is that we designed a plugin system to basically avoid all the middleware hell that we've experienced before. So you can actually describe relationship between plugins. One plugin can actually say, I require another one to work. A plugin can actually be very specific into the order of execution to say, hey, first go run this CSRF plugin, and then only then run the cookie one, or the other way around, depending on what you need. And so when you're loading them, you don't have to worry about the order in which you're loading them. As long as they describe the relationship, the happy loader will make sure that it's done in the right order based on how it's been prescribed. So we've done a lot of that stuff. We're trying to avoid as much as possible. So we're discouraging people from building new happy specific plugins as much as possible. So like a lot of people are creating these plugins and then they're all very disappointed when they're showing it to me, and I was like, but why is it a plugin? Like, why is it not just a regular Node module that you use? There is this excitement of putting a stake in the ground and saying, I created the happy plugin for this.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's not necessary. So we look at plugins as basically something that is directly interacting with the framework, that's directly adding functionality to the framework, that is defining routes. If all you want to do is parse a multi-form response or request, I would say don't build a plugin for that. Just write a module.
Right. Yeah, it's a different way of viewing it, I guess. People kind of, it's I don't know what the mindset is, right? But let's say, like Go, right? It's a pretty early adoption stage for the programming language of Go. And so people love to write like the port of another solution for that thing, right? So people say, oh, if they're using, let's say you didn't have your Passport wrapper for Happy, then they would say, well, people use Passport for Express. I want to write the Passport for Happy. And I think it causes some fragmentation in the community, right? Because you can talk a long time about what the motivations behind that, kind of looking for like some sort of fame or whatever. But at the same time, like they want to help the community by providing a solution. So I think Node and NPM specifically kind of makes it pretty simple, right, to just use NPM modules in general. And so perhaps you're right that it makes more sense to write a module that is easier to manage in that way than trying to do a specific plugin for Happy.
Yeah, and the other thing is that really all you need in order to create a Happy plugin is to export one function called register, and so that's all we're looking for when we're loading a plugin. So, if you're writing a module and you really want it to be easily absorbed into the Happy ecosystem, then write your module the way you would write it for anybody to use, and then just add one more exported function. So it can also work as a plugin for Happy. And I would argue that if you're doing that, might as well export one more function, and then it can also work as a middleware for Express. If you design it properly, then it should be pretty easy to bridge the two for most of the basic stuff that people are looking for.
Let's pause for a minute and give a shout out to our sponsor, FreshBooks. Now, we've been using FreshBooks literally for years and years and years. I gotta say, probably as far back I can remember using FreshBooks as like 2007, 2008 maybe. But they're a staple in our business and what we do. We would literally be lost if we didn't have FreshBooks to use for our invoice management. We absolutely, hands down, red-faced, love FreshBooks. Absolutely. So just in case you didn't know, we love FreshBooks. But if you're the kind of person who's still sending your invoices with Word or Excel, and maybe you've kind of got your receipts kind of shoved into a shoebox, kind of keeping track of your expenses there and just kind of hoping things will work out, Well, with FreshBooks, you can easily do all of that. You can create invoices online. You can capture and track expenses on the go. You can get real-time business reports with a few simple clicks. It's super, super easy. Perfect for any large or small business. We absolutely love it. And we want you to try it today for free. You can sign up today at getfreshbooks.com. And here's the delicious part that FreshBooks is doing for our listeners. Every day, they're giving away a birthday cake. That's right, a birthday cake to someone who signs up for a new account from this show. So for your chance to win, enter the changelog in the How Did You Hear About Us section when you sign up for a new account. And just know that with FreshBooks, every day could be your birthday. So go sign up at getfreshbooks.com.
So when was 1.0 of Happy released? Or I guess a better question, I'm not sure what your versioning structure looks like. When was Happy production ready released?
Well, it was in production before 1.0, but so we're using the numbers to basically as just a regular Stanver contract of a patch is just a bug fix that's backward and forward compatible, and then minor is backward compatible, and major is not backward compatible. And so 1.0 came out, I think, in April. We got it out right together with the Node.10 release. And that has been used in production for since then. And we're working on 2.0 right now, hoping to ship it out next week. And there are really no major changes in it. It's just that it's been long enough that we've accumulated a little too much backup compatibility crap around it. We've, as we've been using it, as people have been using it, we got a lot of feedback, and a lot of the decisions we made, in April were no longer valid in September. All of a sudden, we're like, oh, we really don't want this configuration value to be in the same node as this configuration value because it doesn't work right when you're trying to use defaults. And so we made backward compatible changes, but it got to a point now where it's kind of time to clean it up and do a breaking release. So it's a very non-dramatic 2.0.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was watching, I don't know what video it was, but like a tutorial Happy video that you all put on, and I just noticed somebody was adding routes, adding handlers with the route method on the server. And then I saw in the documentation that there was the add route method. And so I was like, I wonder where, something's wrong, or, in my head, I was like, I bet there's a major change coming out that's like breaking, that's either deprecating this or breaking it or something. And it was interesting to me that you all have a issue open for 2.0 breaking changes. That's a neat way to do it. And it was pretty, simple for me to figure out what was going on and why I saw the kind of discrepancy between the two. So how much, I guess my question is how actively is your, issues on the project watched? Like, do most people know that these breaking changes are coming that are using Happy, or I guess that's an awkward way to say basically, but how much activity have you guys had around like the open source issues, kind of pull request kind of a thing?
So there's a couple hundred people that are actually actively watching the issues. At this point, pretty much everybody who's using it in any kind of serious capacity, if you have a production dependency on it, you're watching what's going on. Mm-hmm. And we've basically went all in on GitHub as our everything. It's our project management solution, our team communication solution. It's basically, we put everything there. There is no other like ticketing system for Happy, like privately in Walmart or anywhere else. We basically made a decision that it's an open source project, and we're going to run it completely as an open source project. Even though I get bug reports from internal teams, and I always say like, go open an issue, and they're like, really? Like this issue, you want me to like put it on the web? I was like, yeah, go open an issue. It's like, I'm not embarrassed by it. It's like, it's a bug and we'll fix it. You like, go open an issue. I mean, people will see the commit, so it's not like you can hide
sneak
anything.
It by them. Yeah.
But we've also made extensive use of milestones even before GitHub kind of cleaned their act with versions. So we've been using milestones quite extensively. So we don't do release notes because all we're doing, we're very religiously tagging everything to an issue, and then the issues are all part of milestones. So you can see exactly, if you just look up, you want to say, okay, what changed between this and this? You can just bring up the milestones, and you can see exactly what issues were associated. And then once we did that, we kind of added the breaking change label, and we said, hey, you know what? If we're gonna make a change that's gonna be breaking, and before we were 1.0, basically every minor release was a breaking change. Like every one of them was like, oh yeah, you can't upgrade unless you like rewrote your entire app. And after that, it became a lot less significant. I think we made like 2 breaking changes throughout 1.0, and both were for security reasons. So like we changed the default of like multi-part parser not to create files by default. Stuff like that we felt like, you know what, this is a breaking change worth making.
The whole Node community had to kind of to do that pretty much, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. So we had a couple of breaking changes in 1.0 that were just that important. But overall, it hasn't been a big deal. And now we're working on 2.0, and we're kind of like, we have the one issue that we collect everything, and it's more of like edited, and it's a lot more friendly for you to understand. But then every individual issue that is actually the one where the change is being made, we also tag that.
Gotcha.
So because I'm not expecting everybody to be able to sit there and go through my 300 breaking changes issues in 2.0 and like read every one of those. I mean, that would be awful. So instead, like we're basically doing it that way, and it's also great because then once we're done writing a migration guide, is just kind of like doing some editorial on that particular issue.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it too. Like we're gonna go in and edit that, and that will be the migration guide. Like we're not gonna actually like publish a wiki page of doing that.
So do you know anyone like that's using Happy in production besides you guys at a large scale?
I don't know about large scale. I know that Mozilla was using it for some of their identity stuff. For some of their browser ID, they were using Happy. I don't know what's the status right now, but they were using it as of a few months ago. I know MasterCard is using it for some of their new project. Condé Nast, the publisher, they're using it as a building block for their new cross-platform environment. And of course, Walmart is using it quite heavily right now for mobile, and we're looking this year to expand beyond mobile to a lot of other areas of the e-commerce business. So it has some significant adoption. But then others, have made a decision to either build their own or use Express. So I think the default behavior for a lot of people right now is to pick Express because everybody else is using Express, and then they tend to, once they got into Express, they feel like it's too much right now to make changes, so they just keep building more and more layers on top to make it more manageable for them. So I'm hoping that as time passes and more people are seeing what we're doing with it, they can make a different decision. And for example, like if you have an existing API and you want to take the proxy strategy to migrate to a new stack, which is it's a really great approach in terms of sticking your layer in between and slowly making changes. You don't need to go and otherwise you have to sit in a dark room for a year and rebuild everything. And of course we know how well that works in production. Like when you ship the new version and nothing works right, and then it's a year behind and the project gets canceled and everybody quits.
Right.
So and basically you can deploy Happy with probably about 30 lines of your own code and get all the proxy functionality immediately at Walmart scale.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, that was kind of my next question was, what's the future of Walmart look like for this kind of stuff? So how much so you're on the mobile team, and how much, I don't know what the best way to ask is, but how much impact have you had on the other teams in Walmart?
So it was kind of interesting because there was, about a year ago, there was some effort within the people in the company who like to set standards and they came to me and they said, more people are asking us about Node, so can we make it the formal that like Happy is the official framework at Walmart? And I said, no, like I don't want that to be the case. I don't want anybody to use Happy because some policy is dictating it. Because I wouldn't use it because you tell me what to use. So I don't want to do it to other people. So we never actually promoted it within the company, and people just picked it up all on their own, which is kind of neat. All of a sudden, we're getting issues open, and then after a few back and forth, they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, are you from the Santa Clara office?" So it was kind of like this funny where we were meeting other people on the IRC channel, coworkers that we have never met before. So some of the other teams were building smaller panels for the main website, recommendations and the social stuff. They're using Happy to build their own stuff, and they have their own deployment, their own servers, and they're every once in a while they'll come back. But the real goal for my team this year is going to be to kind of look and see where we can add value beyond mobile, as Walmart, e-commerce as a whole is moving to new APIs and new technologies on the back end. We're all going to have to move to that stack, and then also we're expanding our mandate to other countries. So right now the mobile team is focused primarily on the U.S., where we have Walmart and Sam's Club, and we also are working on the mobile apps for Asda, which is the Walmart brand in the UK. And Walmart is active in a lot more other countries, including Mexico and Canada and China and Brazil, and it's a very long list. So we are at some point going to expand to those. So it's really seeing how much we can scale the Node engineering process beyond just scaling the software, but also scaling the engineering itself, right. the writing of the software itself.
We're going to pause the show for just a minute and give a shout out to our awesome sponsor, TopTal. They've been sponsoring the show for a little bit, and we've had a chance to tell you about some really awesome stuff they're doing. I've been working with Brendan, their co-founder and CTO, and I mentioned that I wasn't quite sure what to expect from them, and I was excited about what they're doing. They're helping developers who want to freelance with some really awesome companies find ways to do that. And it's their mission. These guys are the real deal. They're engineers themselves from top to bottom. They're not technical recruiters trying to pimp developers. So if that's what you think, then you've got them completely pegged wrong. They're a network of elite engineers all around the world who work with some really awesome clients. And for those of you out there who are freelancing or would like to freelance, you've got to check out TopTal. You can work on special projects with companies like Airbnb, Artsy, IDEO, and many others. You can work remotely. You can go to Andrew's favorite place, which is on a beach, or anywhere in the world. No office is required. And to get started, head to toptal.com/developer, click Join the Best. And because they want to work with only the best senior engineers out there, they got a well-thought-out 4-stage screening process that begins with a personal phone call via Skype to kind of get to know who you are and introduce you to who they are and what their mission is and see if you're a fit. And from end to end, the screening process includes an English-speaking test, a timed algorithm test, technical interviews with core TopTal engineers, as well as a test project. And once you've made it past the screening process, the sky is the limit. And if you think you have what it takes, head to toptal.com/developer right now to get started. Tell them the changelog sent you and enjoy. Now back to the show.
One of the things I wanted to kind of implore, I don't know if that's even the right word at this point, but to kind of congratulate or maybe thank you guys about was, we've had on the show a few times in the last couple of weeks, we've had discussions around, how one deployment tool will come out and another deployment tool will come out and say, we are better than X, or we don't suck as much as X, and they'll kind of take a shot at the person that they're building on top of. And I was looking through Happy, and you guys obviously are, I wouldn't say you're a competitor with Express, but you've definitely kind of entered the same space as Express. And I don't see anything on your website saying we're better than Express, or the reason we're doing this because Express stinks. And I personally, I just wanted to thank you guys for that, because I think that's a good thing to get away from in the open source community.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of reasons for that. I think I had in the last year, I had one tweet where I said basically something like, it's time, if you're doing something serious with Node, it's time to start looking beyond Express. I think I was a little more snarky about it, but really there's there's two ways of looking at it. One is we are clearly the underdog in this space. Both Express and Restify, which is the joint API framework, have a lot more deployed use cases than Happy has right now. We have more revenues going through it, so combined, there's definitely more money being bet on Happy than everybody else combined. But that's not a very meaningful statistic.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
enjoy saying it.
Basically, you're just saying
if
Walmart's
you-
using it at that point.
Yes. So, well, I know if MasterCard puts some real revenue on it too, I mean,
Yeah.
I think between those two, it's going to be like pretty significant. But if you're the underdog and you're starting to basically say nasty things about the industry leader, like you're really coming off as a dick.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not really coming off as like somebody who's like. And the thing is, the people who have Create Express, particularly the former Learn Boost guys, they're now with WordPress bought their cloud app startup, but or spinoff. But those are all fantastic guys. I mean, they are just awesome people and brilliant engineers. So for me to go out and like say anything bad about their work, I disagree with the choices they've made. And I think that architecturally what they've produced is not compatible with the process I want to have.
Right.
But like to say that it's bad or it's just going to be stupid. And the thing is, those are very two different philosophies. Express is very lightweight. It's basically just giving you very, very a little bit of sugar on top of Node. And that's what most people want. So I don't think I need to be
Yeah.
we don't need to actively go against it. But at the same time, like we're definitely trying to get more people to adopt Happy. We're definitely trying to highlight where we think we're better than other frameworks in terms of the functionality we provide. Mm-hmm. But I think you can do it without being a dick.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's what you all are doing. So I congratulate and thank you for that. So for the listeners of the new listeners of the show, we do at the end of every episode we ask the same questions to our guests. So Eran, I'll go ahead and ask them to you now. The first one is for a call to arms. So something around Happy or any one of its modules or in Node in general that you'd like to see the open source community kind of pitch in and contribute to?
Mostly just use it. We really are looking for more people to give it a try. And the thing is, if you try it and you don't like it, please tell us why. Like, go open an issue and say, I tried it, didn't like it, here's why I didn't like it, good luck with it. Like, we love issues. We actually don't have a Google group, like most other projects, because we just want everybody to open issues. Like,
right.
And we have a label called discussion. So we're basically using GitHub issues just like a mailing list. And we find that it's basically, it's creating a psychological barrier that people are less likely to be spammy and troll, where in the mailing list it's kind of like expected.
Right.
So it's working really well. But like really, like my request is for people to just go and give it a try and play with it, find bugs, ask for more stuff, and we're happy to engage.
Awesome. If you weren't working at Walmart or working on Happy, what would you be doing?
I would be a full-time farmer.
That's awesome.
Pretty much. Right now, I'm only a part-time farmer. I would, if I could afford to do that full-time, that's definitely what I would be doing. There's a famous farming joke of a farmer goes to Vegas and win the jackpot. So everybody's saying like, what are you gonna do now? And he kind of looks up and he thinks about it and says, I think I can continue being a farmer for another 5 years.
That's awesome. What would you farm? You live out in California, so are you into like avocado?
I actually I'm not a big fan of the orchard stuff. So I have a small apple orchard, but mostly a lot of vegetables. And I have quite a lot of animals between chicken, ducks, geese, emus, alpacas, pigs. Bunch of beehives. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
Beehives.
You're definitely the first guest that we've had that has said that. But it kind of is a recurring theme. It's very rare for us to get, somebody that we would say, what would you rather be doing? And they would say, oh, I'd go into another, technology industry or something like that. Typically, developers and people that's in my experience, that sit behind a computer all day tend to want to do something with their hands if they had more time, So for you, it'd be farming. For me, it'd be woodworking. And some people, it's surfing and all that. So yeah, it's a common theme among developers that I found to
I agree with you,
to
Andrew.
kind of dream about doing things with your hands.
Woodworking and bees.
Yeah. Cool.
So I actually I gave a talk at Real Time Conf in October. Basically, all I did was talk about food for an hour to engineers, and it was like by far the most insane talk production I've ever put together. It was 4 months of preparation. I had to actually rent a U-Haul and drive it all the way to Portland from California because I had too much stuff I couldn't ship it.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
you did it. Yeah, so developers, I'm sure, were very glad to hear you talk about food.
It was fun. It was like a psychotic, like I think like the budget was like over $5,000 for the talk. It was crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, and the video is online, so you should check it out.
Yeah, we'll have to link to that. Our last question is for a programmer hero, somebody in your life that has been influential.
I don't think anybody has been influential, but I would say Roberta Williams would be my childhood engineering hero. Of course, if you're if you're not as old as me, she created all the King Quest games.
Yeah.
So she together with her husband Ken, they created Sierra Online.
Yep.
And so so I grew up on those games, and all I want to do is kind of like reverse engineer them and figure out how they're done. Played my first King Quest, when I was probably 10 or 11-year-old. So
it's cool. Yeah, I have fond memories of games that I played when I was a kid. The one thing about this industry that has kind of amused me or shocked me at kind of both levels is you expect a lot of your coworkers to have spent a lot of their childhood playing video games on the computer, and for whatever reason, a lot of developers just didn't come that route. So it's kind of interesting to me to bump into someone else that enjoyed a lot of the old school games that perhaps a lot of the newer developers kind of never even heard of.
Yeah, my kids are playing King Quest now, so it's fun. They're playing right next to me, and they keep asking me like, "How do you spell this? How do you spell that?"
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, hey, I wanted to say thanks again for joining us on today's show. We're here with Eran Hammer from Walmart Labs and Spumco, as they're so noted on GitHub, talking about Happy and Black Friday and the success it was. And you guys are definitely doing a pretty awesome thing for the Node community. And I mean, shoot, Node should write white papers about Walmart, because I think it will help to preemptively squash any Node can't scale arguments after hearing the success of Black Friday. But I also wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors, DigitalOcean and TopTal, for supporting the show. You can head to DigitalOcean.com to set up your cloud server today, and make sure you use our promo code ChangelogSentMe. That's ChangelogSentMe, in all caps, to get a $10 hosting credit. And if you want to freelance with companies like Airbnb, Artsy, or IDEO, you can head to TopTal.com/developer and click Join the Best to see if you have what it takes to join TopTal's network of elite engineers. Again, the URL is TopTal.com/developer. And that's it for this week. Thanks again to Eran Hammer for joining. Eran, I said that funny. Thanks again to Eran Hammer for joining us. And also thanks to the listeners for tuning in and for your support. If you haven't yet, you can subscribe to the Changelog Weekly. It's our weekly email where we share everything that hits our open source radar. You can subscribe at thechangelog.com/weekly. I think we're off next week, right? We're gonna encourage all of our developer friends and listeners to enjoy the holidays with your family and loved ones, and we will be back sometime
in the new year.
Yeah. So until then, guys, let's say goodbye.
Bye.